name is Kuchenbrod. I'm the general manager for the core customers here at Arcadia. I'm joined by Marlow.
I'm Marlow. I oversee technology for Southwestern Health Resources and the technology operations group for Southwestern Academic Medical Center.
And we're going to be talking about strategies for managing data quality and a framework that we use at our organizations and that you can use at yours to be both proactive and reactive in working with data.
And we do believe that this will be the sexiest conversation that you will hear while you're at HIMSS.
So why does this matter? Every day, the average American hospital is generating 137 terabytes of data. For scale, the Library of Congress in its entirety, all of the Library of Congress's digital archives is a tenth of that. So we generate 10 times the size of the Library of Congress every day at every average hospital. So we have a lot of data in healthcare. At Arcadia, we've got almost 3,000 different integration points for different data sources. And we know that the most important thing for this data being useful and usable is for it to be trusted, high quality data. And when we with him surveyed healthcare leaders, we found that 98% of them prioritized improving the quality of their data, which they ranked higher than the availability of multiple data sources and even higher than physician engagement.
So as you can see from the diagram, the data ecosystem is massive. And so as a healthcare IT executive leader, I've got to be really thoughtful around what this looks like. We're constantly having to work through data challenges and data issues, and making sure that we're thoughtful around this entire ecosystem is absolutely imperative. For us, we look at things like master patient index. Could you imagine having a master patient index where you take patient data and you match it with the wrong patient? Could you imagine what would happen if the records for one patient ended up in the records of another patient? We have to work through that all the time. So we're going to get into some strategies, some of the challenges and some of the things that we're doing to both be proactive and reactive in this data governance world, in this environment where data is coming at us a million miles a minute. How do we manage it? We're going to get into a number of the strategies that we use in order to be able to move it forward.
So when we talk about our strategies, we talk about them being left of boom and right of boom. That's a term borrowed from first the military and then cybersecurity picked it up. In those cases, a boom is literal, right? How do you prepare knowing that something may go wrong? And then how do you react once something has gone wrong in the moment? So in cybersecurity, this is more about threat actors. In data operations and in data quality, this is actually happening all the time. This is something going wrong or something suspicious in the data. So how do we prevent a data quality issue from happening? And then what are the strategies to react to it once it has occurred, if it does slip through? And so our framework, our left of boom strategies start with preventing human error. You mostly achieve this through automating repeatable tasks, because if you have automated a task, there is less of a chance of a human making a mistake while executing it. Your second major strategy here is documentation and clear labeling. How do you make sure that everybody touching the data or taking some action with the data or something where the impact of something going wrong will be bad? How do you make sure that error is really difficult to achieve?
One of the things with the data boom, as we get into this and we talk about the left of boom and the right of boom, I imagine you all have some of these same scenarios in your organization. Is that true? Constantly inundated with what you've got going on and trying to figure out, are you with the right of boom? Are you detecting, or are you planning and preventing? And so where are you in your journey? It's an important question to ask. Who's working on this? Where are we? Are we at the detection? Are we at contain? Are we back at plan, prevent, and unmanned? Where are you in relation to data in your organization and that data boom?
Absolutely. Another important preventative strategy is knowing what to expect. And this is about having the right domain context. So this is about knowing what correct healthcare data looks like. This is about the knowledge to say, hey, I see a bunch of mammogram codes for young men. That's statistically improbable. I may have a mapping issue. And knowing the clinical context of working with the data in healthcare to understand, hey, something's funky here. It also means knowing and communicating about changes in the data ahead of time. So is a file format about to change? Is a system going to upgrade? What are the impacts of those things going to be on my use of the data? And am I prepared? You also want to design systems that fail gracefully. So this is like having bouncers at the door, rejecting bad data that it arrives. This is using regular expression patterns to detect, is the file name that I received the one that I expected to? This is if it's an invalid CSV format, don't load it. This is if I can identify before the data is loaded that there's something wrong about it, I should.
And that's that verification validation that often gets overlooked or missed in an organization, looking at it and verifying that what I should have gotten is what I got. Validating, does it make sense? Is this data matched up with the right data? Are we able to get the right inferences, the right analysis, the right detection as we move forward?
So as much as possible, you want to catch an issue with your left of boot strategies
Yep.
before the data crosses the threshold into your system. That is the best place to find a data boot.
Yep.
However, healthcare data is messy. It is a full contact sport, right? And data booms are actually happening all the time. So if one has happened, how will you know? And so the first lever here is detection. So how do you identify that something anomalous has happened in your data so that you know you have something to react to? We have a class of detection mechanisms that we look for anomalous changes, unexpected churn detection in the data. You can do this on the underlying data itself. So for example, am I getting the distribution of dates that I would expect to get? Do I have the recency of data that I would expect to have? Do I have the right distribution of codes that I would expect to have? You can also do detection on analytic outputs using the data. So take a calculated quality measure. You have the denominator and the numerator. You can measure the percent difference every time you load new data. What was the change in the denominator? What was the change in the numerator?
Absolutely.
Because most of them shouldn't change a lot.
Exactly.
It overrun. If
That's
they
right.
drop by 90%, that's probably a problem.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the next right of boom strategy, which is containment. If my quality measure dropped by 90%, I do not want to load that onto my quality reports.
That's right.
So how do you contain that bad data or that suspicious data that just entered the system? We have a library of seatbelts that catch you if one of our churn detections is triggered. So if we see something that doesn't make sense to us about the data, we do not want to let it load further downstream, because if you think about the end users of this data, you don't want them and their workflows and their day-to-day jobs being interrupted by the impact of that poor data.
Yeah.
You want them using the most recent correct data. So how can you contain the data once you have detected that something was potentially problematic about it? And we use seatbelts for that. And then how do you restore the system back to full working order?
Right.
Because you don't want to be missing your new information for very long. So how do you back out the data? How do you replay the latest correct data and be ready for the next incremental data load to continue?
Yeah.
That might involve getting fresh corrective files from the source. That might involve making a coding change to the ETL. That might involve any number of different strategies depending on what the issue was in the first place.
Yeah, and before we move on, I just want to take a moment just to touch on how can you do all of this if you don't have a data strategy? How can you do all of this if you don't have a data partner? And how can you do this if you don't have a system that's aggregating a lot of your data together? Good news is we have a partner, Arcadia, that helps us do all of those things. So for us, we're able to detect. We're able to work with a partner to help contain, because we have one system that we're containing in. And the restoration process is a partnership. So we actually have a really strong partnership where if we see something or they see something, we're working proactively together or reactively together, whichever it takes, in order to get to that point where we're able to restore back to a certain point where business can continue. So having all of that data in one place is really important. Our organization, what we do is we have data that comes from a number of different large healthcare systems, and we pull it all into one so we can do population-based analysis. Can you imagine what would happen if we were unable to do the analysis across the population at scale in a platform where all of these components are not there? We're actually blessed to be able to have all of these components there in an environment that helps us continue in our business, even when we notice that something has happened from a data boom perspective, whether it's to the right or to the left. we've got it covered. We'll talk a lot more tomorrow about seatbelts, which is a really cool concept that I'm really looking forward to. Hopefully you'll join us tomorrow and we'll be able to share more then.
So to summarize, the way we stay safe with our data safety,
Yep.
is we prevent human error through automation, through documentation. We create an ecosystem where there is a high level of knowledge about what the correct data should look like and when changes are coming. And we design systems that are very thoughtful about how they handle failures to reject data right at the doorstep before it enters the system. Then if something has happened, and with healthcare data, something always
happens. Always will.
just like when you're driving on the road, you can be safe, but you can't control the weather. You can't control the other driver
Right.
on the road. Something will happen.
Hence the seatbelts.
Hence the seatbelt.
Hence
So
the
how
seatbelts.
will you know that something has happened to the data? How will you prevent that data from impacting downstream users? And then how will you get back to a clean system for ongoing use from that point forward?
Absolutely.
How does this impact your organization if you adopt strategies like these? What we found was that upon implementing these strategies, the user's trust of data, as reported by the actual folks using those quality measures, doing population health, raised 15% after we adopted these strategies.
And so let's talk a little bit about AI, because everybody's got to plug AI into every presentation, right? So we're going to make sure that we cover it as well, because from a platform perspective, we know that's where everything's heading. We're all going to continue to bridge the gap with AI. We'll talk a little bit about generative AI, of course, but here are just some of the opportunities that we've observed when we take a step back. What we know is really helpful is to have this functionality, but to have it in an environment where you can do it at the beginning of the process, in the middle of the process, or as the process continues and through its entire life cycle. So it's super important to have a platform and a partner that can help you do each of these things. These don't just happen automatically, and not every organization is really good at it. So you really want to take the time to work through, what does it mean to do good anomaly detection? Do you know your data? Do you understand your data? Do you even know where your data is to be able to detect what those anomalies look like? When we're looking at validation data accuracy, those are things that we talked a little bit about earlier, validation and verification. Do you have teams that can do that level of work? Or do you need a partner that can help you work through verification and validation? Monitoring and alerting, we talked a bit about it earlier as part of the detection and then continuing to move forward. Are you running observability? Are you monitoring your system? Does it make sense for what you're seeing? Can you get eyes on something before it happens so that you can address it before it becomes an issue or a data boom? You know, when we look at the effectiveness of training and training data, what are you training on? Are you even doing training? Training seems to be one of those things in the project management lifecycle that often gets cut out. But do you have training data? Is it high quality data? And is it training in a way in which will allow people to do things in a productive way in a production environment safely? Promoting consistency across systems, I can't speak enough about what that means. Making sure that you have that commonality, that single thread that you can pull through to really understand your environments. You have to actually work at what that means for you in your environment. The last one we'll touch on is filling in missing data. What are you doing to run processes that will detect and determine, here's a pattern, we recognize that things are missing. How do we fill in that pattern? AI can help us along the way with each of these, building them into your infrastructure and finding tools that can help or a partner that can help is absolutely essential as we continue to move forward. So these are just some of the use cases around generative AI in general, that can really help move things forward. These are some of the opportunities we've seen, not just from things on a list, but where we actually see real world examples and use cases where we're actually able to solve the problems.
And there are parts of this that computers are much better at than human brains.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to detection. If we sat down and came up with a list of all the things that we would want to check for, we'd come up with something a few hundred long, maybe even 1,000 or 2 wrong. There's so many ways that data can go wrong in healthcare, and a computer, generative AI applications in particular, are much better on an unsupervised basis without being told what the data quality rules are in advance, detecting just that something has happened.
That's right.
And so you can vastly expand your reach and what you're able to detect by going beyond the list of rules that you as a human could come up with and think that you might want to check.
Absolutely. So we'll also talk about challenges and best practices. So We could probably go through an endless list of challenges. You all see them. Just shout out something that you've seen in your data. What's a challenge that you all experience? Duplicates. All right, duplicates. You got one on the tip of your tongue. Biases. That's a great one. Biases is a great one. That's one we all struggle with right now, trying to put rules around data that means something to somebody and you're not sure how it means to somebody else. Any other examples? Yes. Inconsistent data. Absolutely. So you're seeing it, you're feeling it. AI can help, platforms can help, and getting in an environment with a partner that can help work through it is important. But it all goes back to data governance. If you don't have a data strategy and you don't have data governance, you don't have a platform that's clean and a partner to help, you can run into a lot of different challenges. And these are just some of the examples of best practices. Making sure you have a full data lifecycle plays into the data governance side for sure. Looking at from a maintenance perspective, a lot of times we end up getting in a situation where we can't continue to run the business because we're not doing the maintenance that we need. How do you work there from that perspective? What Gen AI can augment? So asking that question and then really digging in to find out in an exploratory way what you can do. And the list is endless. But a lot of the best practices come along with experimentation and working through it and not letting someone tell you, oh, we don't need data governance. It's not sexy. It doesn't work here. It's got to work. You have no option. AI will not do for you what you need it to do if you don't have good data. Period. That's kind of the mic drop, but I won't drop the mic.